Hey everyone, it's Selena with CMC Fine Art.
Hey, have you ever hit a wall so hard while painting that you had to put your brush down and go to therapy instead of finishing it? Just me? In this video, you'll watch my slow descent into madness, how I finally clawed my way out, and how changing up my process helped me to love art again. I'll also give you some acrylic painting pro tips along the way. This is a look at how I finished this piece after a fairly lengthy painting break by working in color groups, breaking it down into background, midground, foreground, using gold foil, and fighting my perfectionism one flower at a time. If you've ever felt stuck, you're in good company. I started with gessoing my canvas, the 60 by 48 inch canvas that I got from Michaels, which PS FYI, they normally have a Black Friday sale and you can get those pretty cheaply, I would say. So definitely recommend signing up for their email list so that you can get some good deals at Michaels on these large canvases. The only drawback to those is honestly they're pretty toothy, like they have a lot of grain on the canvas, and my preference is honestly to use the watercolor board from Frederick's canvases, but they don't have one that is that large. So I got a solid gallery wrapped one from Michaels and then just added a few more layers of gesso to it. This time I thicken up the gesso itself just because I didn't want to do as many layers, to be totally honest, because your girl didn't have the energy for it. So I made it a little bit more viscous, did maybe 2 to 3 coats, sanded in between. I also applied it with a foam roller so that I didn't have to try to have good brush technique. Let's be honest, I just didn't want to deal with brush strokes. So use the foam roller to A, speed up the process, and B, accommodate my lack of enthusiasm for using a brush. I like to also tone my canvases before I start painting, mostly because the stark white of the canvas is just a lot for my eyeballs, kind of hurts. And I also like to have another layer of paint just so that if there is any remaining tooth on the canvas, then I don't have to work so hard and do so many layers, and I can be a little bit imperfect with my gessoing skills. I like having that first layer of paint for those reasons. Additionally, for my toning, I often do a combination of burnt sienna with some alizarin crimson and a cadmium yellow. Mix it up, slather that on there, and go to town. As for the sketch, I normally like to use some tracing paper so that I can make as many mistakes on my sketch as I want, and then transfer paper to transfer it onto the already toned canvas. I use a white charcoal pencil for this just because I find that the graphite, I have to do a lot more layers to cover up the graphite, and frankly, I just don't feel like it. So I want to get my painting done as quickly as I can, as efficiently as I can. So I use the white charcoal pencil. Unfortunately, with the white charcoal pencil, sometimes with the mediums that I use to slow down the acrylic paint process, the charcoal pencil gets wiped off anyway. So at this point, I had to kind of sacrifice some of my preferences for detail to account for that. Additionally, while I was going to go ahead and transfer my sketch over, lo and behold, I realized, oh no, I've run out of tracing paper, and oh my god, that stuff is expensive, and this is a huge canvas. So no, I wasn't about to use, 18 sheets of tracing paper so that I could get my sketch on there. I had the universe whisper to me, use the projector. Don't be a little control freak. And so I did. Quality is not super great, but gets the job done. So I had to sacrifice a little bit of the detail that I normally like to use on my sketch so that I could speed up the process a little bit and also be budget friendly. Then I moved on to the actual painting process. I started with the background, so I can be a little bit messy. That way, if I need to do a little bit more blending, the next layer is just gonna cover that right up. I don't like really having to be so meticulous, honestly, with like the outlining of my background. I already have to be meticulous with other details, so let me just have my piece for a little bit. So I started with the darkest darks of the background. I use predominantly in my color palette for the parts of the background dioxazine purple from Liquitex, and I also used phthalo blue and phthalo green. Those are my 3 colors all mixed together for that general background color. All right, now going into the flowers, my main color palette was medium magenta and titanium white as a mixture. It's my kind of main pink, and then I build up with some magenta and brilliant purple in between. I also use deep violet as my main like shadow choice in the flowers. The shadow portion, that is deep violet, mainly use, like I mentioned earlier, dioxazine purple, phthalo blue, and phthalo green. So my shadows tend to be kind of a mixture of that, plus a little bit of that deep violet, just depending on where in the face or in the flowers I was working on at the time. I also mix in dioxazine purple with some titanium white and also brilliant purple kind of streaks, as well as blue permanent, which is kind of like that lighter robin's egg type blue that I use as kind of a little pep here and there. And I also use cadmium orange and that medium cadmium yellow, plus or minus some titanium white. I do some glazes with the medium magenta and alizarin crimson as well to add a little bit of glow and depth in those flowers and in the orange sections as well. I keep those colors pretty consistent throughout just the piece in general. And honestly, I know I mentioned that I kind of paint off of vibes most of the time, and like whatever colors I know are going to be part of the scene, but keeping my color palette a little bit limited made it a lot easier for me to finish, since I was really having some issues kind of this time around with finishing a project. So kept that color palette, use it for the lips as well, and also for the face. I started out with those big shapes, loose strokes, very little pressure. This part honestly was a little bit meditative for me, and then I usually get a little crazy, overshoot my brush marks, and then it's all good. You can still fix any of your mistakes if you catch it fast enough. You just gotta bust a ninja move, dip another brush in water, and erase your errant brush stroke. That has honestly reduced my fear and like high stress levels of perfectionism to the point that I can actually paint. So you just gotta be fast. You'll also see me holding several brushes at a time for that particular reason, so that I can catch any mistakes, scribble it out, wipe it off with a paper towel or my finger, and then carry on. If you're getting into acrylic painting and want a beginner-friendly project to build up your blending skills with acrylic paint, I've put together a free tutorial that will show you all of my brush strokes so you can follow along, and I'll include my custom medium blend that I use to make this paint glide like butter. Come get your free tutorial by signing up for my newsletter. I'll have the link below in the description. As far as delay goes, honestly, it wasn't even technical problems. It was therapy. I had to work through some demons, break some generational curses here, learn about attachment theory, and for a while, even touching a paintbrush, getting out of bed, putting clothes on so that I could film myself for YouTube was just a little much. Have you ever felt like your painting was a little too vulnerable, a little too personal? Yeah. I am curious, what's the longest you've ever walked away from a creative project for? Drop it in the comments below. I'll tell you mine later in the video and why that actually helped. After the background, I moved on to the midground, which was actually the face. So my rule of thumb is background, midground, foreground, just so that I can kind of mitigate layer chaos and be a little bit messier. It helps me to build up depth and not have to stress so much about the outlines and having to be diligent about not crossing over into lighter sections of the painting either. For all of my acrylic paintings, I use acrylic mediums. There's a mixture that I use from Nova Color with the acrylic retarder and their matte medium plus some Liquitex slow dry medium, and then I add just a little bit of satin medium as well for added oomph and vibrancy while I'm painting so that I can get the acrylic paint to not dry as quickly. You'll see that I also use a Stay Wet palette this time around. What a solid game changer for me. I wasted so much less paint this time around because I used a Stay Wet palette instead of just a glass palette. If you struggle and you're not a super quick painter, this will hopefully help to extend your open time. The caveat is that I have to be a little bit more violent with my brush because the medium makes the paint get a little bit tacky, like as it starts drying and you're trying to blend some colors out. So it takes a little bit of practice. It's a little bit different, but I honestly prefer it like by a long shot, and it saves me from having to do oil, which honestly would be even worse for me because I literally cannot wait for the oil to dry. Like I gotta capitalize on my motivation when it hits. So acrylic is gonna be my medium of choice for a little bit. Here I worked by color group because, let's be real, can't remember what color she mixed in order to get that nice shade of pink. Okay, I have synesthesia, so I look at a color and I'm like, sounds like it's got approximately 75%-ish reds and twinkles, and I mix by vibes, okay? It's hard for me to retain all that, so I have to make a lot of notes while I'm mixing stuff. And then on top of that, once I get the perfect color, I'm like, okay, I got it, and then everything that involves that color gets painted. It's way too hard for me to try to commit all of that to memory. This method of breaking up the painting into chunks and color groups made it a little bit more manageable for me to actually finish once I had kind of traversed through my emotional depths, because I could see progress being made. I know a lot of people will build up in their ugly layers first and then just kind of layer and layer on top of that. As a neurodivergent lady with difficulty starting projects because of some mild executive dysfunction, it is just way better to work in sections because it feels like I'm crossing things off of my to-do list. And once I have a little bit of dopamine in my dopamine-starved brain, then I'm like, wow, I can do this. And then I do. Oh, man. So I got a system. I got a process. We all have our own process. Do what works for you, okay? If you have a hard time starting your projects and it takes you forever to finish them, that might be the way to go. Sometimes I trick myself and I'm like, you can have that. You can have that Starbucks drink if you just do like 5 minutes. Just like brush your hair and 5 minutes. And then once I get the ball rolling, then I can often do a little bit more. Sometimes I can just squeeze out an hour. Sometimes that's all I got. But more often than not, I surprised myself and I was able to do a solid 2 to 4 hour hyperfixation time. After all those main forms were done, I glazed some shadows over, bumped up the highlights, and this is where the painting kind of just clicks for me. It goes from totally flat to, is this even really gonna happen, to, oh hey. I think I kind of see it. And that's also when I risk ruining everything with a little too much of a highlight. And then you gotta do a little pat, tone it down. Last but not least, I did the gold foil. Love how it just kind of sparkles when the light hits it right, like a mad little magpie hoarding the sunshine. Just so fun. If you're like me and you thought that you would be prepared after watching just one YouTube video on how to do gold foil, make sure that you have something beneath your canvas to catch all of the little flakes of the gold foil, because if you thought glitter was going to stay and linger in your place forever, no. I think I inhaled 80 years worth of gold foil dust, and hopefully my sad little ones will live. So should probably have a mask or do it outside, but then you run the risk of your foil like blowing away in the wind. And then have your vacuum handy. Not pictured here is me frantically trying to vacuum up all of the gold foil from the floor after I finished, and then knocking so many things down. My paintbrushes, the cup, I'm glad it didn't break, a painting off the wall. It was a mess. So do yourself a favor, plan a little bit better, learn from my mistakes. Now, as far as my longest break goes for this painting, it took a solid 4 months of me emotionally in the trenches. Taking a step back, recharging, centering myself. Was I productive? In a different way. Wasn't with art, but I came back and I feel a little bit more myself. So if you ever feel stuck, don't beat yourself up too much. Like sometimes that's your body's way of telling you, hey, you're tired and I'm gonna force you to take a break if you don't take a break. You'll get back into it, try to baby step your way, figure out your system. You can steal mine if you need to. Here's the finished painting. And just a reminder that even when art feels too heavy, too monumental a task, breaking it down into those smaller chunks can really just make a difference for you. That system might work for you, so you can give it a try, steal it if you want. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it and want to see more of it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It will help me grow this channel and I'll be able to bring you more relatable content.